Hi, welcome to Nancy Jester Reports for Tuesday, October 3rd, 2017. Before I get into the details of our meeting today, I wanted to give a shout out and a job well done to the folks, the parents in the Dunwoody school cluster that got together and put on the All for One golf tournament. It was a charity event where they raised funds for every single school in the cluster, from all the elementary schools to the middle and the high schools. So it benefits everybody there. It was a very organic event put on by all of the PTAs and foundations in the various schools, and these parents worked really hard, volunteered a lot of time, and a lot of people made that a great event. And I think it's going to be an annual one, so next year I look forward to being part of that. Stan and I sponsored a hole there. We're committed to do that again next year and more. So good job to everyone with that. Today we met as a committee of the whole, where we receive reports and go over things and have committee work where we will vote on things next week. So let me tell you about what we discussed today. We received an interesting update from the Atlanta Regional Commission, and DeKalb's own former CEO, CEO Emeritus as I like to call her, Leanna Levitan, was present and did a good bit of the presentation, as well as some of the other members. I'll just give you a brief overview. I think these are important facts. A lot of folks aren't dialed into what the Atlanta Regional Commission is and how long it has been around. It has been around since 1947, and it was actually the first in the nation as a multi-jurisdictional public planning agency, and it provides for intergovernmental coordination. So it was very interesting that it comes into being because various state and federal laws mandate that every county belong to a regional commission, and some developments, depending on how large they are mandated to have statements and studies about the regional impact. So the board is made up of commission chairs, county mayors, citizens, representatives from the city of Atlanta, because that's the biggest city, Department of Community Affairs. You've got about 39 people total. They meet every fourth Wednesday, except they have a combined meeting for November and December. So we went over a lot of the different boards that are under them and what they do. They also deal, in addition to dealing with transit issues and census data, they also deal with aging and the population that is aging in a given area, and services that you deliver to folks like Meals on Wheels. We got data, so in DeKalb, 10% of the population is 65 or older. Of that population, 12% live in poverty. 1 in 3 of that age group is disabled, and 29%, so almost a third, live by themselves. So DeKalb received 17% of the total ARC funding for aging. It's based on a formulary, so that was very interesting. Also recently, a $96,000 block grant to Chamblee and Doraville was given to study pedestrian transportation in the Beaufort corridor. So those are just some of the things that go on with ARC. Ms. Levitan is a part of that group and sits on it, and so it's a very interesting entity. I'll hopefully be able to report more to you on that, but I was very thankful for their presentation today. So we went over various things today in committee. We will be going through some public hearings on updating our pension code, mainly because we're going to be changing our plan year to be congruent with the calendar year, which is going to make audits and end of year closings for our books a lot easier, because right now it's an April 1 through March 31st plan year for the pension, so they're going to go to calendar year. So that'll be positive. We went through various purchasing items that are going to the operations committee next week, so we didn't hear those, but that's everything from janitorial services to the purchasing of light bulbs and things like that, some very perfunctory stuff. We also had a pretty full Public Works, PWI, Public Works and Infrastructure meeting, and I'll go over that in a minute. So many things were heard in committee today for that. Let's see. So those were the major items we covered in the Committee of the Whole. So let's go to the Public Works and Infrastructure Committee meeting. Again, we had a lot of agenda items, but let's go over the highlights. So we went through various procurements, some low bids for some improvements to the Pole Bridge wastewater treatment plants, low bids for some water filter removal, repair and replacement maintenance at the water plant up at Scott Candler, some change orders to one of the tank in Tucker, the elevated tank, change order for extension of time only to make sure that we get the paint job and repair properly done for that. We are still holding in that committee the consent decree program management contract that we have with C.H. Jim Hill. We need some changes made to that, and we're still working on that. Let's see. We're also still working on the agreement for a new vendor to run the renewable energy facility down at the landfill. So that's still being held in committee, but that'll be a good thing when we finally have that happen. We approved what we call the LMIG funding request, so that'll go to the full commission next week. LMIG is Local Maintenance and Improvement Grant Program. That's basically your state money for roads. So the committee reviewed that and recommended approval for that request. Then once we vote on it next week, then the county will make the request for this funding from the state, and we should get that, and we'll be paving more roads next year. So, and this is independent of SPLOST. This is just a regular routine request that we make yearly from the state. We did go over the largest thing we did go over was what we call we're referring to as RFP number 2, which is a design build service for gravity sewer system rehabilitation, replacement, and construction. So this is a pretty large award. It's almost $27 million, and it is part of the consent decree work where we need to upsize and improve the sewer system. This particular, if my memory is correct, this particular RFP will take care of 2 large lines, or have a lot of work done on 2 large sewer lines in the Chamblee area. So that was a very important thing to discuss. We also went over, in general, what we call the CIP, or capital improvement budget and bond allocations. This is separate but overlaps with consent decree. So we've got capital improvement in aggregate for the sewer system, and then a large component of it is work that is mandated by the consent decree. So we did go over where we are with our bond funding there. As you may recall, back in 2010, the county said we've got about $1.34 billion of work we need to do on the sewer system. A bond was floated for almost $400 million. We are pretty much 100% encumbered on that bond now, meaning all the proceeds have either been spent or have a plan to be spent. So sometime in the next 12 to 18 months, we'll be talking about what we're going to do with another bond issuance, what we're going to do with maintenance or regular rate paying funds, how we're going to keep working on the sewer system as we need to do. So that was very important. Next, at our next PWI meeting, we'll get a consent decree update as well. So that was Public Works today. In the FAB committee, which stands for Finance, Audit, and Budget, we kind of skipped ahead. We approved a change order to our auditor and their contract. We had previously, and I thought this was very interesting, they had been, excuse me, they had a 3-year contract for audit with 2 extensions possible. We've done those 2 extensions, so we'll be bidding out. They can bid for that contract again, or anyone who's in the audit service industry can bid on that contract. So we'll be going through that procurement process this year. But over the years, we had planned for 5,721 hours of work. They actually had 8,101 hours of work, because you will recall me talking about this in the past. We had the past 2-3 years previous, we had some terrible issues to go through on our audit. Just reconciliations weren't being done. There were all kinds of findings. So naturally, the auditor had so much more to do with their work as well. So we had to increase payment to them based on that issue. Hopefully, we're mitigating that now. I will tell you that we went in 2014, we had 12 findings. 2015, there were 8 findings, and now the 2016 audit, there are 5 findings. So we're going in the right direction. My goal, certainly as the chair of the Finance, Audit, and Budget Committee, is to have 0. We are on our way to doing that because we are solving these problems. They take a little time, but we are getting there, so that's good. It would really help if we had a permanent CFO, so I just want to put that pitch in there. We still don't have that. Let's see, so we did go over that. We also agreed to use an extra contribution above the required minimum to the pension plan to pay off a loan, a debt basically that the county owed to the pension plan, so that we can get that off our books more quickly, because that was not at a good rate of interest. So hopefully we may be able to pay the entire loan off by the end of this year. If not, definitely next year we should see that. We accepted a grant for the Magistrate Court for violence against women. That was just simply a grant acceptance, so we're recommending approval of that. The big thing we did was to talk about the audit itself and the 5 findings. I think I'll do something separate for you rather than talk about it in this particular video. Go over each of the 5 findings and let you know what we're doing to correct those and next steps on that. We'll do a separate video about that. But we did review that. And in closing, we reviewed 2 policies, basically a P-card, purchasing card policy that's congruent with the latest state law, and I think we're finally at the end of the time frame where we perfected this. Got a few more things to go on it, very minor, and the law department needs to review some things. So I look forward to this coming to the full board soon. We also reviewed a draft of the travel policy. Not quite there yet on that one, and I will be meeting next week with my with the COO to talk about what are the next 4 policies that will come before the committee. So that sums up what we did today. It was an eventful day, a very good day at the commission where we covered a lot of ground, and next week we'll be voting on a lot of these issues. So stay tuned for next week, and as always, be in touch with our office if we can be of service, and we'll see you next week.